Game Science put out 15 minutes of their new game. People have been waiting a year for this. A year since Gamescom last August. This is the game they shelved a Wukong DLC to go and make. They had a DLC in development. They stopped, and they went and built this instead. And now that I've watched all 15 minutes of it, I get why. But here's the part nobody's talking about. The man they named it after failed a job interview. That's the whole thing. He applied for a government post. He was the best candidate in the country. Not one of the best, the best. And they turned him down over what he looked like. And it humiliated him so badly that he killed himself on the palace steps in front of the emperor who did it. And that's not the twist. That's the opening act, because what happened to him after he died is why, 1,200 years later, his face is still pasted above the front door of Chinese homes all over the world. And it's why Game Science looked at every god in China and picked him. His name is Zhong Kui, and before he was a god, he was a nobody from a mountain. The mountain is Zhongnan Shan, the Zhongnan Range, just south of Xi'an. You can see it from the city on a clear day. In the Tang Dynasty, Xi'an was called Chang'an, the biggest city on earth. 1 million people behind walls you could see from a day's walk away. And Zhong Kui grew up close enough to look at it and far enough that it may be as well as have been on the moon. He lost his parents young. He raised a younger sister, and he studied because there was exactly one road out of a village like his, and everybody in China knew what it was. It was called the Keju, the imperial examination. Now, I want you to understand what this actually was, because it's the thing that makes the rest of the story land. In the 8th century, while most of the world was handing out power by blood, China was handing it out by test. Anyone could sit it. Farmer's son could sit it. And if you passed, you didn't just get a job, you got rank, land, a title, and your family got dragged out of poverty for 3 generations. The catch was that it was brutal. You memorized the Confucian classics, hundreds of thousands of characters, and then you sat in a brick cell the size of a wardrobe for days, writing essays and poetry from memory. The pass rate ran in the low single digits. Men sat at it 20, failed, sat at it 30, failed, and were still walking to the capital at 60. Zhong Kui was going to pass it. Everyone who knew him knew that. He was the best student anyone in that county had ever seen. And he had a friend. They studied together for years, and they made the walk to the capital together. The two of them, on the road to Chang'an, arguing about who was going to place higher. Here's where the tradition splits, and I'll be straight with you about it. Some versions say Zhong Kui was simply born ugly. But the version the opera tradition kept, the one they still stage today, says something worse. On the road, he got sick. Badly, feverish. He wandered off the road in the dark and into what the story calls a guiku, a lair of devils, a lair of ghosts. And when he came back out of it, his own friend didn't recognize him. Whatever was in there had taken his face and given him a different one. And this is the part I keep coming back to. He'd lost the one thing the world was going to judge him on, and he went to the exam anyway. He placed first. Not first in his county, first in the empire. The Chinese word for it is 状元, the single highest score in the entire examination. There is one of these every few years, out of hundreds of thousands of candidates. A 状元got a parade. His village built a stone arch with his name on it. It was, for a scholar, the highest thing a human being could achieve in that civilization. He had it. He had earned it from a mountain village after something in the dark took his face off him. And then came the last step, the palace audience. The emperor sees the top candidates in person and confirms the ranking. The emperor looked at him and took it back. Whatever the reason went into the record, everyone in that hall knew what the reason was. A man who looked like that could not stand in front of the empire and represent it. The most meritocratic system in the pre-modern world got all the way to the finish line, and then threw away its own best score because of a face. Zhong Kui didn't argue. He didn't petition. He walked out onto the palace steps, and he drove his head against the stone until it broke. He died there, in front of them. And now the details of the whole story turns on that. The emperor, shamed or frightened or maybe both, ordered him buried with honors. Specifically, he ordered him buried in a 绿袍, a green robe, the robe of a junior official. Think about what that is for a second. That's the rank, that's the job. The thing they refused to give his face, they gave to his corpse. They put the uniform on the body of the man they wouldn't let wear it. They gave him the promotion once he was too dead to enjoy it. If that just made you angry, good. It made me angry too, and we're only halfway there. Like and subscribe because it gets significantly stranger from here. Because here's what happened next. In Chinese folk religion, the underworld is not a pit. It's an office. It has departments. It has paperwork. It has a magistrate, Yanluo Wang, King Yama, who reads your file when you arrive and decides what you are worth. And the story says that when Yanluo Wang read this file, he saw exactly what the Tang court had thrown in the ground. So hell gave him a job, not a junior post. Yanluo Wang made him king of ghosts, 驱魔真君, literally the Lord who drives out demons, commander of 80,000 of them. Every wandering spirit, every plague ghost, everything that comes through a door it shouldn't, his jurisdiction, his problem. And so with the shape of that for a second, the thing that took his face in the dark on that road, they work for him now. He didn't get revenge on them, he got put in charge of them. Which brings us to a bedroom in the palace about a century later. The emperor is Tang Xuanzong, the great Tang emperor, the one whose reign is remembered as the golden age right up until it wasn't. He's come back from military exercises at Lishan, Mount Li, and he's fallen ill. A malarial fever. It holds him for over a month. The court doctors have nothing. And in the fever, he dreams. He dreams he's watching a small ghost in red trousers moving around his own palace. And this thing is stealing. It takes the embroidered perfume sachet belonging to his consort, Yang Guifei, and it takes his own jade flute. And then it starts dancing around the hall with them, mocking him while he lies there and can't move. The emperor shouts for his guards. Nobody comes. And then something else walks in. A huge figure, torn cap, blue robe, one bare foot, a beard like a thundercloud, and it catches the little ghost, and it gouges out the ghost's eyes, and it eats them. Then it turns around and introduces itself. My name is Zhong Kui. I was a candidate in the imperial examination and I failed. I have sworn to rid the great Tang of ghosts like this one. And here's the detail I love most in this entire story. The little ghost had a name too. It's called Xu Hao, and the name means roughly empty waste. So it's not really a monster, it's a concept wearing a body. It's the thing that eats your year and leaves you with nothing to show for it. The luck that drains, the money that goes nowhere, the effort that produces nothing. That's what he was hunting, not demons in the abstract, waste. The emperor woke up and the fever was gone. He summoned his court painter, Wu Daozi, the most famous painter in Chinese history, and he described the dream. And the tradition says Wu Daozi painted it in one go and got it so exactly right that the emperor said, "You saw him too?" That painting is long gone. No authenticated Wu Daozi survives, but the image never left. Emperors started giving Zhong Kui portraits to their ministers as New Year gifts. Then ordinary families started pasting him on their own doors at New Year, and later at Duanwu, the Dragon Boat Festival, to keep the summer plagues out. There's a Zhong Kui dance, where a performer in a red court robe and a mask drives the bad luck out of a house. And in most paintings, there's a bat flying near his head, because Fu, bat, sounds exactly like Fu, fortune. 5 of them means the 5 blessings. A man who died with a broken head on a staircase became the thing you hang over your front door to keep your family safe. So, back to the game, because once you know all that, there are things in those trailers you can't unsee. 1, the tiger. In the announcement trailer, he's riding a giant tiger. It looks incredible. It's also not Chinese. The tiger mount comes from Shoki, the Japanese version of Zhong Kui. Japan imported him centuries ago and gave him their own iconography. In the Chinese tradition, he doesn't ride anything. He walks, and the ghosts carry his stuff. 2. The ghost carrying his stuff. That crew of demons hauling his gear in the teaser isn't a random enemy pack. That's Wugui Banyun, the 5 ghost portage. They're his staff. They've been in the paintings for 800 years. 3. The talismans. The swordsman fights with paper. Fu, Taoist talismans. Those aren't invented for the game. That's a real ritual practice. Yellow paper, drawn characters, burn or thrown, still done today. 4. The 2 swords. In the teaser, there's a big ceremonial blade his followers carry, and a smaller one in his own hand. That's straight out of the painting tradition, where the sword is his badge of office, not a weapon he's necessarily swinging. 5. And this is the one everyone's talking about. The character you're controlling for most of that 15 minutes is a young man with a straight sword, slim, hooded, and the Zhong Kui figure doesn't show up until the final seconds. Game science hasn't confirmed anything about who you play, but I will point out one thing. Zhong Kui spent the first half of his own story as exactly that, a young man with a sword and a friend walking to the capital. So, that's why he's on the door. Not because he's frightening, though he is, because China looked at a man the system had judged on sight and thrown in the ground, and decided that he was the one you'd want standing between your family and everything that wants a piece of your year. They didn't make a hero into a god. They took a victim and made him the guard. And if you want to see him working, this is his week. We're in the 7th lunar month right now, Ghost Month, and 中元节, the Ghost Festival, lands on August 27th. Now, remember the friend he walked to the capital with? I never told you his name. It's Du Ping, and when Zhong Kui died on those steps, nobody would touch the body. Nobody. Du Ping paid for the coffin himself, carried him back to the mountain, buried him, and then went home and got on with his life. Years later, last night of the year, Du Ping hears music coming up from the road. Drums, horns, a wedding procession, in the dark, in the snow, moving by lantern light. And the things carrying the bridal chair are not men. That's the story on your screen right now. Click it to watch. And until next time, 再见!